Welcome back to the Successful Author Series. Thank you for joining me. I'm so glad that you are here either live or you are on the replay. Either way, thank you for being here. I so appreciate you so much. Today, I have an amazing guest. She is a mom, a wife. She is an entrepreneur. She's a speaker and she plans her own events. She has a lot to offer to this community. She's got some amazing stories to tell, and I'm going to let her do her own proper introduction. But I just want to say right now, thank you for joining me for this Successful Author Series. You know that I'm bringing to you amazing authors with inspiring stories who can show you and inspire you to be the best person that you can, especially as an author. You know me, Latasha L.T. Jimerson. I'm an author, teacher, book coach, motivational speaker. I live in the beautiful city of Philadelphia. I'm in my apartment. There's a pool upstairs, and you will hear people repairing the pool. You will hear a hammer going knock, knock, knock. I'm sorry. It is what it is. You've been warned. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to bring to the stage the beautiful, the incredible, the fantabulous Desiree Cruz.
Hey, thank you so much for
up?
having me. I'm so excited to be on here. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Let's just go ahead and dig right deep into it and tell us about this book that you released. When was it released and how did it come about?
So Warrior Women is something that I had no idea I was going to be doing. I literally felt like it was a miracle and a moment from God where I had him literally whisper to me, this is something that you need to do. And long story short, what it is we were literally sitting around my dining room table. So I'm going to invite you into my house right now. We're sitting around the dining room table. I have 2 teenage girls, right? We're trying to have a really good conversation. We use that quality time with our kids around the table having dinner, and it's tough sometimes. So we started talking about the word of our year, which was legacy. So we asked the girls, what does legacy mean to you? What, and spark that as a conversation to be able to have conversations around the table with my kids about stuff that matters, stuff that actually matters. And they were talking about the word legacy. And as we were talking about the word legacy, Jesse broke his own rule, which is my husband, which was no cell phones at the table. So I hear this ding go off. Literally, Jesse answers his phone and I'm like, hey, you're breaking your own rule. And he's like, Des, I have to show you this. So his message comes off and it's a picture of a family in Canada reading our children's book to his son at night because his wife just died.
Wow.
And I literally have goosebumps right now thinking about it, still to this day. And I thought it was so beautiful, Latasha. I literally was so amazed by how my kids wrote this book with their dad and how it was touching families all over the world. In that moment, while we're talking about the word legacy, that message comes through. See, like I'm getting teary-eyed just thinking about it.
Yes, wow.
And I looked at them and I said, you know what, girls, you may not understand this now, but it is so beautiful to watch you make such an impact and such a legacy. And all of this was born from the passing of our youngest daughter, Faith. So they took their sister's passing, did a book with my husband about the perspective of grief from a children's point of view.
Wow.
And so it was to help children kind of, when children have significant losses in their life, how do they respond? What is their perspective? And in that message, we got to see live what happens when you say yes to things. And what happens when you carry on someone's legacy in a positive way, how you can use resources to help other people in the world. And honestly, like as a mother, I was so blown away and I just stepped back And I just watched the whole process. Because you know how sometimes women like to step in, take over, control the moment, like, okay, we're doing this. Like, this is what we got to do. And I didn't do that this time. I stepped back and I allowed my husband to have this moment with his kids. And that's the product of it. And it was so beautiful. It made me emotional. As you can see, it still makes me emotional. And I sat there and I said to myself, legacy, like, what am I contributing? That was the moment for me where I said, that heart shift happened, Latasha, right there at that table. That heart shift happened for me. And I said to myself, what am I contributing to this family for legacy other than the financial pieces that people put in place?
Amen.
And in that moment, I said, I didn't know what the answer really was.
Wow.
I didn't know what I was bringing. And I had to really think about that. And it really hit me hard. It kept me up all night. And then I heard God whisper to me that night, do it. And I was like, all right, I'm doing it. Woke up the next morning. I called all kinds of women and said, listen, I want women to share their stories, because my daughter's story has been significant in my family. It's been the catalyst to help the most amount of people in a small amount of time. And I said to her, I'm going to do it. I'm going to carry your legacy out. I'm going to continue pushing forward so people don't forget who you are. And I'm going to not only encourage women to share their stories, but I want to encourage women to leave the life lesson that they've learned from the story to pass it on. And that's the whole purpose of this whole thing, is that we're not only just sharing our stories, because sharing our stories is powerful, but we're connecting a life lesson to it to say, not only am I sharing my story to you, but this is what I need you to know from my story. And this is the life lesson that I want you to understand from my story. So that when we put all these life lessons together and all these stories together, you get a whole book now full of stories and full of life lessons that you can use in your life, in your kid's life, in your sister's life, in your mom's life, and you could just keep going and going and going. And it empowers women, and it empowers the lesson that they've learned from the stories, because it is not a victim story.
Yeah.
It's a survivor and a thriver story, like how we rise.
I love that word, thrive. I'm going to look at that word for just a second and I'm going to back up because we've got a couple people watching. So hello, if you're watching here live, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. We're not able to see your name or what platform you're on, but you're here. So we want to say thank you. And we're going to back up a little bit. I'm going to go into that word thrive, but I want to back up and rewind. I appreciate the fact that you took us into your dinner table, into the conversation, which was very personal, very intimate with your family. But this is who she is, y'all. This is Desiree. She is just a beautiful woman with an amazing soul. And she will bring you in and let you see behind the scenes what's happening in her life, because she's true. She's authentic. She's a real person. So I want to just back up so that people get some context, because I know we just jumped right on in and just started talking, and we can talk all day. But for people who are just coming in, just now getting to know you, just now getting to know me, tell us a little bit, not a whole lot, but just a little bit about the book that Jesse and your daughters wrote, how that came to be, and then how it led into your book. You gave us some context, but I want you to kind of fill in the gaps, because people don't really understand the connection, and the connection is powerful.
Yeah, so our daughter passed away, and in that we realized that children kind of get hopped over in those moments in families, and it significantly impacts them in every part of their life as well. And so part of the healing and part of the impact and part of the legacy of faith, my husband did a book with my two youngest girls, and it was called Where Did My Loved One Go? And in that book, they talk about a children's perspective of what happens when there's a significant loss in their life. And in that book, that's where the dinner table came in. And that book went all over, and we had that message come through from someone from Canada of him reading that book to his son because his wife had just passed. So he was reading that book and helping his son understand when someone passes at his level. And it helped his son process that loss. And then from there, that one book inspired such a big spark and such a huge impact. It was like in our face. You can't deny it once you see the impact of the product, and that message came through. And I thought to myself in that moment, it's time for me to tell my story, right? We host live events all over the world about the power of your story. And at that point, I had never published anything on my own. And I heard God tell me that night, it's time. It's time for you to do the same thing. And so that's where Warrior Women came in. And I wanted people to connect the power of the stories and the women walking around this world and how amazing we are and how people don't understand the things that people go through. And sometimes they don't tell you. And not only that, but like there's lessons that we've all learned that need to be shared so that we can pass them down and down and down so that the future generations behind us can get picked up. So
I love that. Give us a little bit of a timetable, because in my community, I work with a lot of authors that are just starting their journey. And so they feel like it's going to take a long time in order to get their story out. And I love how you are such a great decision maker. Like once you heard God's voice, you decided to move.
yeah.
I love that. Tell me a little bit about the timetable between when Faith passed away and went home with the Lord, when Jesse wrote the book with your daughters, and then when you decided to write Warrior Women. What was the timetable?
So Jesse was journaling in the NICU while we were in the NICU. He took that journaling and made it into a book within a year. And then from there, that book led into him speaking. And then he started speaking all over. Then within the next year, he wrote a second book. And then that one was more personal. That was more of like the actual story of faith. That was finding faith, losing hope. Then right after that book, within that same year, Jesse wrote the book with the girls. And then from there, I would say 6 months after that book was published, I published Warrior Women, and I moved the very next night that I heard that whisper in my ear to call people and just say, this is what I'm doing. I didn't really take a lot of time to think about it. I just decided if I was told something, I'm going to do it. And so I did, and not knowing what was going to come of it. At that point, I had never published a book. I had never led a group of women. I definitely didn't go to Times Square and get it all up on the screens and all that ever before. And I did all of that probably in a very short amount of time and got about 30 women between series 1 and series 2 to join. So it's been absolutely incredible. And it moved very fast. Because once you get going, you don't want to stop. You want it to be finished, And I think the more you push and the more you understand that, you'll see little pieces of impact along the way. But once you see the impact that's happening from the book, it's like you want to get it, and you want to get it finished, and you want to get it done,
Ooh, this is so important for people in my community, because I would say it's about 50-50. 50% don't have a book yet. The other 50%, they have a book, but they're not really doing anything with it, to be honest. Mm-hmm. So they come into my community and they're like, what do I do to market? How do I sell the book? And what am I doing? And I always say it's telling your story, opening up your mouth, getting in front of the right people, and sharing with them what's in there and what's in it for them. Not just about you. It's not about you and your story. It's about they need to see their story inside of your story.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so I love your timeline. Okay, so tell me what year was this that all of these things started from the Jesse's first book, Jesse's second book, and then your first book?
So Jesse started, so our daughter passed in 2017. He had his book out probably by the end of 2017. Then he became, where he was speaking about it in churches and just, going to multiple churches and telling the story of faith within faith. And then, because this little girl was moving mountains in 42 days. I mean, she was only alive for 42 days. So it really didn't, like, for us, it was like, if she can do all of this in 42 days, what are we waiting for? So it really pushed us hard. So I would say his second book came out the next year, 2018. Then our kids' book, probably 2018, 19. And in between that, we started our company and all the live events and stuff. So we had multiple live events all over in between all of that. And then mine came out in 2020. And, I'm sorry, 2021 or 22. And then my second one came out a couple months after that. So they were within the same year.
You are incredible, lady. You are amazing and you are thriving. How does that happen to go from losing a baby to, all those emotions, all the grieving, to just completely thriving as you are today? How does that happen?
Well, I would say what happens is sometimes when the really, really hard stuff happens, right? Because we're promised that hard stuff will happen. We're promised that. I think the way that we respond and the way we react has a lot to do with our faith, and sometimes those moments of, like, you're completely not in control, you're completely at the bottom, sometimes happens on purpose, I think, because it gives us the pain to purpose pivot that a lot of us go through. I mean, I know a lot of people who've turned their mess into a message. I know a lot of people who've turned their pain into purpose. And not only that, like, for me, for my daughter personally, like, this was a way for me to honor her and honor her life. And I know what happens with children a lot, especially with children when they pass. Unfortunately, a lot of people forget about them. And it's like they just have forgotten that I had a daughter and she didn't make it. And it's like, I couldn't, as her mom, I couldn't be okay with that. Like, I wanted to still talk about her, still honor her life. And so it drove me to want to share her message and share her story of, like, we're only here for a limited time, and why not move and move big while we're here? Like, what are we waiting for? What is it that we're waiting for? And that time, we can use our time to just really thrive, or we can use our time to just survive. And that's completely two different lives. And I just saw how hard that she was fighting. And so, like, it encouraged me and inspired me to fight harder, and then on top of it, I had two teenage girls watching the whole thing. And it was really important for me for them to understand and see that we can be broken, get put back together, and continue to rise.
Wow.
Because we can go opposite, we can, but that was not a burden I was willing to put on my kids.
Wow. That's amazing. What is Faith's birthday?
She was born in January 6th of 2017, and she passed in February.
Okay, 42 days.
Yeah.
Wow. And you're so right. If she could impact and move mountains the way that she has done from 2017 until now, 2024, what is that, 7 years?
Yeah.
Wow. So there's
our whole company was born in her. Like, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it wasn't for Faith. I wouldn't have held that conference in Cherry Hill if it wasn't for Faith. You know, I would not be hosting those events if it wasn't for Faith. And that's what I come back to every single time. It's like she is the catalyst of all of it, which is incredibly beautiful.
Wow, I love it. There's such a good lesson in there for all of us. And I see we've got more people that just joined us. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us live. I appreciate you. I hope that you are listening, leaning in, and thinking about what were you doing in 2017, right? Like, what have you been doing over the past 7 years? What could you be doing right now, right, to honor those people that you lost? We just got through, and we're not all the way through the pandemic world, and lots of people have lost loved ones throughout, through COVID and other diseases. But the thing that I want us to know is that we're still here, and so we have work to do.
Yes, we
Desiree
do.
and her family, they're about the business of doing their work, and that's why I love connecting with people, because Desiree is about her father's business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she's doing it. She's moving, shaking, and making things happen. Tell us a little bit about what's in the book, Warrior Women.
So it's beautiful, and it's just with the live events. I had a platform where I met incredible women all over the world and their stories, and it's just amazing to see what everyday women go through. And so I wanted this to be like, let's talk about what everyday women are going through, and let's publish this thing so that people can understand how powerful women are. We're a force to be reckoned with, and I think that when we put us all together, it's like a fist to the face. You can't stop the force, So I just met such incredible women, such incredible stories, such incredible lessons. And I said, let's put it together. Let's all win. Let's all be a part of it. And then let's also, like, if your story hits somebody, because like I said, my story could hit you, but if my story doesn't hit you, her story can hit you. And if her story doesn't hit you, then her story might hit you. And you just don't know who you're helping with your story. So what we did is we put it together all in one book. And then if you feel like this story has touched you, how do I get a hold of that person from here on out so I continue services with them? And so that was a huge thing, because now we're lifting our companies. We're all coming in together to collaborate, and because there's enough for everybody to win. That's the thing, is like, I'm not meant to help everybody. I'm only meant to help some people. And if I don't think I can help you, then maybe Latasha can. Right. And that's how it should really go. And so I wanted to really make a movement of this, yes, where everyday women can share their story, have it impact the people that it needs to hit and it needs to impact, and to give them hope and to give them inspiration and give people community. That's a huge thing about this, is like having the right community in your life was a huge piece of this. So we did this together as a group. And so together in that group, we would heal together. We would cry together. We would pray together. We would laugh together. It was beautiful.
How long was that writing process for everyone in the group? You said 30 women, right?
Yeah. So I broke it in between 2 different series. And so I have series 1 and series 2. It's 15 in each. And we made it move. We moved it along. And it was probably 6 months maybe total for everybody. And then within a couple months from that, I started series 2. So I really did it. I just was moving and moving and moving, and I got 30 women in a year to have them be able to share their stories and their lessons. And it was amazing. It was absolutely incredible. It was a moment that we all had together to be able to share, to grow and heal and all those things. And when those kinds of things are happening in community, that's the stuff that actually matters. And
I need to grab my adapter and plug in this laptop before it goes zoop. So okay. you can keep talking because there's people watching.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I was traveling all over the world, and me and my husband were hosting live events all over the world. So we do things like masterminds and speaker competitions. And it's just been incredible with the retreats and the masterminds to be able to meet so many different people all over the world. So when you meet people all over the world, you get to hear about their stories and you get to learn about who they actually are, not just the business version of who they are. So the vulnerability of being able to share your story is what brings authenticity. And authenticity is the kind of things that I value. So together, through the events, I was able to find the women and hear their stories and then say, hey, this is where we should go next. Wow. So if you don't have a book, you should really consider having a book. The book is one of the major, huge value pieces to a product that you can sell to further. So with the live events, we had the live events, but I realized in the live events with the public speaking, if you're publicly speaking, you should have a book. If you're hosting and mastering skills, you should have a book. If you're going to live events, you bring your book and see how this book really plays a huge piece in the value pack that you bring to the table when you're approaching clients. And that can be in anything. You can have a book about anything. It's one of the biggest pieces to a value stack. So I highly recommend, if you do not have a book, do it. Make it something that's on your list, because it is a huge piece that moves to the next pieces. So.
I love that. We're going to shift gears, and I want to talk about Desiree as the human being, a little bit about a little bit about your background. Where are you from? What was your life like growing up? And just so that we get to know you outside of the role of mom, wife, author, entrepreneur, right? And I want people to listen. As you're listening to Desiree talk about her personal story, I want you to see yourself in her life and think about the things you've been through in your life and what are you still overcoming, and how can you take what she's done and use that as a model for what you're going to do next. And I'm going to close my mic because I don't know if you can hear it. Can you hear that noise?
Yeah.
So I'm going to close my mic and I'm going to let you take over right now.
Okay. So yes, I'm Desiree Cruz. I'm from upstate New York. I grew up in a really small town. I grew up really with a lot of, I had very loving parents, but really parents who struggled with not understanding generational curses. And so I had a significant amount of poverty that surrounded me, really fixed mindsets. We didn't talk about God. They actually went to Catholic school and did not have a good experience. So it's like, we did not talk about God. And so a lot of not so great things that I learned. And so that really had effect on me throughout communication skills, coping skills, just not good. I just did not have good models of any of those things. So I was surrounded by a lot of addiction and not good mindset and really unhealthy coping skills and not learning how to communicate correctly until I got older and realized at that point, I thought to myself, I just don't want to live like this, so I moved out pretty quickly. I left my house at like 17 and I started my own life. And in that moment, I'm like, I am a warrior. I'm not going down like this. And I loved my parents. They just didn't know better, because in their generation, they didn't discuss things like generational curses. They didn't have the same resources. So, but yeah, I was a product of generational curses, really, typically, honestly. And so I decided when I had my own family, I was never going to do that. And so I had a lot of things that I had to walk through and work through for a very long time. I'm telling you, decades of work that I've had to do in every single area of my life: spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, all of it. I had to work, and put in the work, because I promised myself that I was not going to be the one to bring that into my family. I'm not going to have it be brought into my marriage. And that's just the mindset that I had. So I had to work through a lot of things to get to a healthier version of myself. I turned 21. I was going to marry my high school sweetheart, and unfortunately I had a really tragic story happen in my life. I was 21. I was on a ride to a great life and a great family. I was pregnant with my daughter, and he was killed in a hit and run, literally 500 yards from the house that he built for me. And it was in that moment that I really didn't like God, and I actually felt like I was cursed. And I shared this story in my first series of Warrior Women, and it was the first time I ever shared this story because I was very angry for a very long time, and I had to hide it because I was raising a baby by myself at the moment, and I didn't want my pain to carry on to her. So I did a lot of unhealthy coping skills, like stuffing it in, not talking about it. And so I walked myself into a church one day. It was the best decision I've ever made. I'm still at that church. I told myself if I didn't know about God, I had to learn, especially because my daughter's father now is in heaven, and I had to be able to teach her that. And how can I if I don't know? So I walked in the church. It was the best decision I've ever made. It did a lot of healing, and decades of inner work that I've put in. I don't like to push my choices on anybody, but I just want to say that at this point in my life, I've come to a really good point in my life where I can't separate the two things. My spiritual journey is the only thing that's kept me going. There was a lot of times where I fell to the bottom of the ground, and the only way that I was picked up is from his strength and not mine. And so I have come to a place where I'm very comfortable with that in my life now. I can't separate the two things. I don't know how people do this life without a spiritual guide. So God has been a foundational cornerstone in my entire life. And I have continued to push. My daughter is now 17. Um, and I got my degree in human services, and at a SUNY college through all of that. And I was a teacher in special ed for 12 years before this. So I loved it so much. I felt called to it. I was like the teacher that like I needed when I was like in school, because like I had a lot of things in my family, like, you know, they knew it. I was full of aces, right? The school put me as, I was flagged for all kinds of aces, right? And, but nobody ever really talked to me about any of it. So when I was a teacher, I made sure that if I spotted a flag, that I would connect and say, hey, you know, like I went through a lot of things too. I know you don't think that I have, but I have. And, you know, there's hope, and you can have the best life. And so I really love teaching so much, until post pandemic, right? I did it all through the pandemic. And then after the pandemic, it just got a little too much for me. And I decided that I had to pull myself out of that system that I no longer believed in. And so I pulled myself out, and we started our company a couple years before that. So I was able to, and grateful for, to be able to get out so that I can resign from teaching and continue entrepreneurship. And from that moment on, we have been hosting live events all over the world, encouraging people to understand that there is power in your story. There's people who need to hear your story. We have to continue to shine light and hope in this world. And it's okay to challenge systems if you don't feel like you can be a part of it. You can start new, start fresh, create books, and create things that you've never created. And I think when we are more focused on creation, I feel like it's connected deeply spiritually. And I think that the creative process is the closest I've ever been in my relationship with God. The more I create, the more I feel like I'm closer. And it's given me a lot of purpose and a lot of mission and a lot of drive to continue pushing to honor my daughter. So
Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that. And we're going to wrap it up with a nice, pretty bow by talking about your event that's coming up. And I want people to really think about where they are in their life, what they need right now. And I know When they hear you describe this event, the people in my community are going to be like, whoa, that's right on time. That's what I need right now. Tell us what's
Yeah, so
coming
we just
up.
got back from Italy. We had an amazing time in Italy. We had a legacy retreat in Italy. It was so amazing. What we're doing next is we're going to Iceland. So we're traveling to Iceland. It's a speakers retreat in Iceland. We are going to learn and focus on one of the most important skills that you can ever learn. Like communication skills is honestly the best skill to learn and to continue to learn. Be a lifelong learner in this. Because the more you're able to communicate clearly and the more that you're able to communicate your mission, the better sales you're going to have, the better relationships you're going to have. All of these things connect to communication skills. It is honestly one of the most important skills that you can be a lifelong learner in. So, not only are we going to see the majestic country of Iceland and rip your soul open to be able to really pour into your creative spirit, because when when soul shifts happen and heart shifts happen, a lot of creativity things happen. So when I got home from Italy, I'm like, I cannot wait to come home and create. And Iceland is the same thing. It's majestic. We're going to bring you to some of the most majestic places in Iceland. It's all set up for you. You just come along for the ride. And Jesse and I have hosted the entire thing so that you're able just to come and experience, retreat, and learn and speak all along the way with amazing people, an amazing country, and do this thing called retreat, which is a lot of people need to learn, is that it's great to keep grinding. It's great to be in purpose. It's great to keep the mission going, but it's also so important, especially if you're stuck, to be able to shut down and have your soul be ripped open so that you can come back so powerful and so ready and overflown, ready to create what needs to happen next, and be still in these moments and really be in these moments to hear God speak to you. I encourage people to travel as much as possible, because when I travel, I learn so much more about myself. I learn so much more about how little I am in this world, and also all the things around me. And I just have a surge that happens every single time of peace, harmony, frequency, and creation. And when these things all come together, and community, I mean, we have a community already for you of people who have signed up. So it's a fun time to be able to do business, but it's also, because business doesn't always have to be so heavy and so boring. It can be full of fun and travel and community and experiences. So this is what this specific retreat gives, and I cannot wait. We're doing it August 29th. We actually just had our second call about Iceland last night, and we have 2 rooms left currently right now. If you're interested, you can contact me or Jesse Cruz about Iceland, and to be able to further and invest in yourself, to be able to learn more about communication is critical on this journey, especially if you're doing a book.
Yes. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, because it felt like there was a little delay or something. I love the retreat. I actually thought you were going to talk about your challenge, but I love that you brought up your retreat, because there may be authors in here that are like, I want to own my speaking skills and travel at the same time. Like, whoa.
Yeah. Honestly, if you're going to be an author, you should really consider learning more about how you're going to speak that out. Those 2 things go hand in hand, because if you have a book and you're not doing anything with the book, you have to learn how to speak. Yeah. Yep. And you got to speak about your book. You got to get in front of everybody and talk about your book. I mean, that's how people know that you have a book, because you're in front of people saying, I have a book. Right. So I think you can't separate those 2 things. I think those 2 things come hand in hand. The 5-day challenge is my call for people to understand that we have heart shifts that happen, and we have to be intentional about listening to the heart shifts that are happening, because the heart shifts are happening all the time. And when you feel a heart shift, that's when change happens. And it's like you can't go back. It's like your heart saying, no, it's time for me to eat healthy. It's time for me to think differently. It's time for me to take action. It's time for me to start healing and start taking it seriously. Start really leaning into it, because that's where true transformation happens. So that's what I'm going to do. Starting on Monday, I'm going to have a 5-day heart shift challenge. We're going to be doing 5 intentional key areas in my life that's changed my life, period. Without these 5 things, without me leaning into these 5 things, I would have not been the woman that I am today. So we're going to be talking about healing and leaning into the importance of healing. We're going to be talking about empowerment, because it is so critical next to healing. Then how do we take action? Like, really think about how are we moving forward and taking action in these areas. Then relationships, because our whole world is connected to relationships. And then true transformation, so it's the heart challenge, where we're really going to start listening to our heart shifts that happen where we can't go back. And I want a call to action so bad on this, because we need heart-centered leaders in the worst way right now. It is critical for us to start listening to the heart shifts that happen in our lives, to continue to be the one thing that says, you know what, I'm not going back before it's too late. And I don't mean that in a scare tactic way, but really, if we don't start getting serious about things like healing, it's going into your marriage. If we don't start getting serious about things that are healing, it's going into your kids. If we don't get serious about being empowered, then you're not empowering people. You can't empower people if you're not empowered. And if we don't actually start taking action, then we're just talking. We're not actually moving. If we don't actually get serious about relationships, I think it's connected to a lot of things in our life is healthy relationships. And then how do we expect transformation if those things aren't happening? And I'm so passionate about this, because I want people to win, Latasha. I want people to win, because I know that he's called us to win, and he's called us for abundance in our life. And these 5 key areas are going to radically change you. And I want it to be affordable. I don't want any excuses. Let's get in it. Let's hop in it. Let's be intentional, and let's see some change happen. And so I feel really good to be the leader of that.
I
Between
love that.
my Yeah, I just think it's time. It's time for someone to step up in this, and let's start talking about some things that you and your friends aren't talking about. You know?
Amen. Wow. Y'all need to get in the room with Desiree Cruz. You need to learn, sit at the feet of this amazing woman who's helping people transform their lives every single day. How can they get a hold of you and connect with you beyond today?
So I have a Facebook and an Instagram. So on Facebook, it's just Desiree Cruz. You can message me and DM me. Also, I have an email I can put in the chat. So this is my email, so you can connect with me. And then also, I have a website. Did that come in the chat?
Let me check. And honestly, I'm not sure how. Yep, I got it in the private chat for you and I. But you know
Oh,
what
okay.
I'm gonna do? I'm gonna send you this video to post on your page and put all your information at the bottom. So you guys will see in the post that we both create, because we're both gonna create a post. Underneath that post, we'll put all of Desiree's contact information so you can get with her. What is the investment for the challenge, and what's the time that you start on Monday?
So it's going to be 5 days, Monday, July 22nd to the 26th, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be via Zoom, so it's easy and so that people can go to work and come home and still have, some time to be able to dive into themselves. And I want it to be convenient. And it's $97. It's so reasonable, and it's that way on purpose, because I want people to hop in and not use money as an excuse to be able to get better. And the intention is that we're gonna come in and we're gonna really get serious about these 5 things, so that we can see for ourselves the huge impact that it makes when we really lean into these 5 areas. So and then my website is www.mergeworldwide.com. So it's very easy. And thank you so much for having me, Latasha. I love what you're doing. I love that you're enabling people to grow and to push and encouraging them to continue to be inspired and the importance of things like leaving behind a legacy with publishing in a content. I mean, content is everything. So you are shining bright, my dear, and I'm so glad to know you. So thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for being open and willing to share and serving people the way that you do. I know that the people in my community are going to be chomping at the bit to get a hold of you as soon as this video ends. So thank you so much. Give us a final word, a quote, a scripture, something that you think about every day to keep you focused.
Oh gosh, I do so much. Every day I do it. I would say one of the biggest things is the daily Devo that I do. I have the U version on my phone. Me and my husband do it every morning together, and we see scripture, we read it, and then we talk about it, and then we pray together. And I think that's like one of the biggest foundational pieces in my life to start your day with stuff like that. One of my favorite ones is, gosh, I have so many. I could do all things. He's the one that strengthens me and gives me strength. For the plans I have for you. Oh, you got it. Yeah. For I know the plans I have for you. Plans for a future. That was so huge. That's right in my dining room. Jeremiah. Gosh, there's so many. And I really love this. This is another really good one. This is from Myron Golden because he's one of my husband's mentors. So I follow him as well. He says, let's make the rest of your life the best of your life.
Ooh.
And when he said that, I was like, I just, why not? Why not? Why not make the rest of your life the best of your life?
Wow. Well, I feel like, man, I don't want this to end. I feel like we need to do a part 2. Can we do a part 2?
We could do a part 2. I'm
Let's,
always here for a part 2.
yeah, let's stay on here and plan it out and let's serve people. You serve the way you do, I serve the way I do, and people come away from us better.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all.
Glory to God.
That's it for today. We're out of time, but you know what? We're going to plan a part 2. So keep your eyes open and stay tuned for the next episode of the Successful Author Series. Thank you so much, Desiree Cruz, and we will see you in the internet streets.
Bye.